Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell you scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse wherever you stream podcasts. Just be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. An important note: sources for this episode can be found in the show notes. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. Every now and again, a new listener will reach out and ask if I have a list of favorite episodes or stories, and where they should start. And I get it. With nearly 300 episodes to choose from, picking a starting point can be tough. And what's true for you is also true for me. But the more I've thought about it, the more I realize one of my favorite episodes, and one I always tell a new listener about, is the harrowing and tragic story of Christopher Case, which, by the way, is episode 28. As part of my process, I won't go back and update the audio on old episodes, because for me, part of the journey is tracking my growth and progress along the way. Research, episode writing, storytelling, narration, audio editing, all of it has been a sometimes tough learning curve. So while I won't go back and re-record, I will move forward and tell you the story with fresh eyes and narration. The story of Christopher Case is confusing and unsettling, and it's not just because of how the story ends. It's the details along the way that blur the line between reality and sensationalism. And for Christopher Case, it seems a random encounter with a woman changed his life forever. In this episode of The Red Treehouse, we're going to explore the terrifying story of Christopher Case. What happened to him in April 1991? And was it due to a witch's curse? I'll tell you the story. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. In April 1991, Christopher Case was a popular and well-liked 35-year-old music executive for Muzak Holdings, a company, quote, producing the soft music heard in elevators and waiting rooms all over the world, end quote. He grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and in the years prior to taking on the role at Muzak Holdings, Christopher worked as a small-town radio DJ in Raleigh, North Carolina. After taking the job, he moved across the country to Seattle, Washington, where by all accounts, he excelled in his new role. Friends described Christopher as a well-rounded individual. He was driven, hardworking, friendly, and fully devoted to maintaining his physical fitness. He took daily supplements and worked out several days a week, and seemed to be in top physical form. He also had a few well-known quirks. Despite having friends, he was a loner, who, despite having caught the eye and attention of potential romantic interests, preferred to be single. Christopher loved music, and more specifically, quote, the music of ancient cultures, end quote. Even more specific than that, he enjoyed ancient Egyptian music, and quote, compositions of the ancient world, end quote. One article stated, quote, Chris's idea of a good time was sitting at home listening to his favorite tracks rather than going out to socialize all evening. He found solace in the arrangement of notes and harmonies rather than in the company of people. End quote. On April 11, 1991, Christopher took a business trip to San Francisco, California, where he met with other music executives. Not much is known about the trip, but at some point he was introduced to a woman who interestingly enough had a passion for ancient music. One article stated, quote, "He had been introduced to an older, unnamed woman who shared his passion for music of the ancient world, particularly that of Egypt and other Mediterranean civilizations." End quote. The conversation went well, and within a short time, the woman expressed her desire, more than once, for Christopher to take her back to his hotel room. Though he enjoyed the interaction, Christopher politely declined these requests as the woman was much older than him. What started as a pleasant conversation between two people sharing an obscure mutual interest quickly turned ominous and scary. The woman, seemingly upset by Christopher's rejection, told him she was a witch and that he would regret spurning her. She told Christopher she had cursed him and that he would be dead within a week. Unfazed by this, Christopher and the woman went their separate ways, and he traveled back to Seattle without incident and without giving her claims a second thought. When he arrived at home, he called his closest friends, including Sammy Suter, and told them of the strange interaction. They, too, brushed it off. A few days passed uneventfully, and Christopher seemed to forget about the woman and the alleged curse. Something interesting. According to several articles, Christopher was an atheist and didn't believe in the occult or paranormal, and it's likely his disregard for the woman's threats were rooted in this. 3 days after the encounter with the woman, on the morning of April 14th, Christopher called Sammy Suter in a panic. He was out of breath and difficult to understand. She helped him calm down, and he told her what happened the night before. He'd been kept awake most of the night by whispering voices. Christopher was certain they were coming from inside his house, and though he'd checked every room and possible hiding place, he could not find the source of the voices. He also reported seeing shadows moving around his apartment. This was strange, because Christopher lived alone. And he described an overwhelming feeling that he was being watched by someone, or something, all night long. One article stated, quote, "Upon returning to Seattle, Case was plagued by unsettling dreams and an intense sense of unease, which quickly escalated into terrifying nocturnal encounters." He described these experiences to his friend Sammy Suter, back in North Carolina, who had some knowledge of the occult. Case reported hearing voices and he felt constantly watched. End quote. This would be the first of 3 phone calls Christopher made to Sammy in the span of a few days. We'll continue right after this quick ad break. During the initial phone call, Sammy suggested Christopher visit a religious or occult bookstore in Seattle, with the hope of finding answers. More on that in a minute. A few days later, on April 16th, Christopher called Sammy again. This time, he explained the terrifying experiences from a few hours earlier. He said he was attacked the night before. He'd woken up in the middle of the night, paralyzed, and pressed into the mattress. He felt pressure on his chest and tightening around his throat. When he opened his eyes to face his attacker, no one was there, just the pitch blackness of the room around him. The attacks grew more forceful and violent as the night went on. He described the invisible attacker lifting him off the mattress and letting his body hang mid-air for several seconds, before slamming him down onto the bed, rendering him unconscious. And later that morning, before calling Sammy, Christopher discovered his bedsheets were covered in dark pools of blood, and after trying to determine the location of the wound, he found cuts on the ends of each of his fingers. Now panicked and thoroughly scared, Christopher visited a local Christian bookstore, Evangel Incorporated, where manager Rodney Higuchi noticed his calm but determined demeanor as he purchased candles, a handful of crucifixes, and books on spiritual warfare, witchcraft, and the occult. In making small talk, The store manager asked Christopher what he was going to use these items for, and within a few seconds, he laid out the full story, including the witch's threat, the disembodied whispers, and the physical assaults from the night before. By that afternoon, Christopher had begun his preparation to fight whatever entity was attacking him. Upon returning home, he drew the battle lines clearly. He placed crucifixes and candles in every room of the house. He poured salt lines in the threshold of the house and in various rooms. And he pored over the books he purchased and scribbled frantic notes on waging spiritual warfare. By now, Christopher was obsessed with, and terrified of, the violent entity that was visiting each night. We don't fully know what happened on the night of April 16th into the morning of April 17th, but we do know Christopher was so scared by what he encountered that he left his home and checked into a hotel. Within a few days, he'd been transformed into someone barely recognizable. He had difficulty sleeping, his health was starting to suffer, and his phone calls to friends revealed his fear and panic. In the early morning hours of April 17th, after checking out of the hotel, Christopher went to a local Catholic church, where he met briefly with Father James Mallahan, who expressed concern for his well-being. Christopher explained he was being attacked by something malevolent, and that he was terrified it was going to kill him. He also returned to the Evangel Incorporated bookstore. On his second visit, manager Rodney Higuchi noticed a stark change in Christopher's disposition. During the first visit, he was calm and controlled, but on the second, he was frantic and visibly shaken. Christopher explained the attacks had grown more violent, and he was certain a paranormal entity was going to kill him. Sometime on the morning of April 17th, Sammy Suter attempted to call Christopher at his home, but was unable to reach him as he had not gotten back from the hotel stay. At that point, she was unaware that he'd left the home in the middle of the night, and concerned for his well-being, she contacted the local police department and requested they do a welfare check. Upon arriving at Christopher's home, the police found the front door locked, and without a warrant or cause to enter the home, they left and contacted Sammy to let her know. Sammy, on the other side of the country, felt helpless and unable to help Christopher, and panic started to build as she was forced to wait to hear from him directly. Later that night, she found a message from Christopher on her answering machine. What you're about to hear is the actual audio of the voicemail Christopher Case left for Sammy Suter, followed by a translation.
Hi, Sammy. This is Christopher. Well, they just about got me. They are trying to kill me. So whatever it is I do to defend myself doesn't work anymore. This is what it's coming down to. I'm not looking forward to tonight. It's serious. It's very serious. My life.
Hi, Sammy. This is Christopher. Well, they just about got me. You know, they're trying to. They are. They're trying to kill me. So whatever it is I do to save myself doesn't work anymore. That's what it's coming down to. I'm not looking forward to tonight. It's serious. It's my life. End quote. Sammy noted the calmness in Christopher's voice, and it seems like the panic was replaced with a calm resignation, almost like he'd accepted his fate and knew what was in store. It would be the last time anyone would ever hear from Christopher Case. The next morning, after not hearing from him, Sammy once again reached out to the police department and asked them to do another welfare check at his home. This time she explained Christopher was afraid someone was going to kill him, and told them about the witch's curse from the week before. The officers went back to Christopher Case's home, and what they found was straight out of a horror movie. When they entered Christopher's apartment, their senses were immediately bombarded. They saw lines of salt poured along the threshold and every wall of the house, with small pillars in each corner. They smelled burned down candles, as Christopher had scattered them throughout the house. They noticed crucifixes interspersed with the candles, and they heard the eerie sound of music. But not just one type of music. Christopher had turned on several different types of religious music, the combination resulting in an unsettling cacophony of voices, chants, and instruments. As officers attempted to make sense of the confusing scene, they made their way through each room of the apartment, the sounds of Gregorian chants providing the soundtrack. Eventually, they came to the bathroom door and noticed light escaping from the bottom. They pushed it open, and there, fully clothed in the bathtub, with his knees pressed to his chest and his head leaning against the wall, was Christopher Chase. He was dead. Speculation about Christopher's cause of death began almost immediately. Shortly after his death, the coroner ruled Christopher Case died of acute myocarditis, quote, an inflammation of the heart muscle caused by viral infections, certain drugs, some autoimmune diseases, and rarely vaccines, end quote. Symptoms of acute myocarditis include chest pain, shortness of breath, heart palpitations, and in rare instances, fainting. It seems the coroner determined Christopher Case's heart simply stopped beating. Some were skeptical of the coroner's ruling, as Christopher was a young, healthy man who was in peak physical shape. His close friends and family have questioned the official explanation of Christopher's death, largely because he didn't exhibit the telltale symptoms of myocarditis in the weeks leading up to his death. While we know acute myocarditis does happen, there are those who believe Christopher's cause of death was more malevolent. It's important to remember that Christopher was not a religious person, and so it was out of the ordinary for him to seek help from a religious bookstore and to visit a Catholic church. More than anything, it seemed Christopher was in a state of desperation as he sought help and relief from whatever entities were attacking him. Christopher's friends, including Sammy Suter, described him as rational and not prone to exaggeration or hysteria. His mental health suffered considerably in the week after returning from Seattle, transforming him into someone who was paranoid and afraid. It's undeniable. Something scared Christopher to the point of despair. Was he experiencing sleep paralysis or night terrors? It is possible there was a normal rather than paranormal explanation for his experiences. Yet, despite the coroner's report and the theories that have followed, we may never truly know what happened to him. This is one of those cases that genuinely scares me. More than hauntings, aliens, or scary games. That a healthy young man suddenly and inexplicably passed away is horrifying enough. But that it came at the exact time the alleged witch cursed him is, well, it feels like too much. The possibility that a person can exert that much power and control over another's life and death is the stuff of literal nightmares. In some ways, we're forced to accept the coroner's ruling. It is officially how he died. But there's a part of me that asks the next question. We know what caused Christopher's death, myocarditis, but we don't know how or why it happened. Is it possible it was a tragic outworking of the phrase, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned"? Or was it a tragedy with strange coincidences wrapped around it? As we close this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're left with these lingering questions. What caused Christopher Case's death in 1991? And was it due to a witch's curse and supernatural forces? Or was it the result of a more natural explanation? I've shared the story. Now you decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.